right. So I just want to thank everybody for coming. This means a lot to me, and I'm doing what I'm very passionate about, which is helping and healing people and helping people be guided back to their own personal truth and finding joy and happiness in the life now. And there are ways of thinking and just really simple kind of aha moments. When you realize those, you can start to make little shifts and changes that really do affect your life on a grand level. And so being aware of those really can give you a real good shot at having some happiness and really finding your soul's path and purpose here in this lifetime. And that's my passion, and my joy is to help people reach that. You know, enlightenment is something that's a lifelong process, and it continually happens. But in my personal belief system, that seek and you shall find, that it starts within yourself. You know, you really do have to get back to where you're authentic and being who you are, and that's where we do start to find that joy. But we first have to fall back in love with who we are and trusting in our path and our process, and that's where we're gonna find the joy in life. So the Buddha, so you might be questioning, like, who is the Buddha? So Sudatta is his first name, and so Sudatta had quite a path in life. He was born into a leadership house. His father was a ruler, and they lived in a palace, but there was a prophecy in his time that his father heard about, and it was that his son would not follow in his footsteps as the ruler, that he would become a spiritual teacher. And so he did everything that he could to keep that from happening, such as he fired all the people that worked in the palace that weren't pretty. He didn't have anyone come around that had any kind of poverty. He just basically had a bunch of role players pretending to have this happy, joyful life. And it was basically illegal to talk about anything death, anything negative, because he was trying to make this perception of this perfect world to his son, so that he didn't feel the need to go out and have a purpose to go and try to help and heal people. So, and he, you know, Sudatta went through that for a really long time. It took him till the ripe age of 29 years old before he finally, with all his protesting to his father, that he actually got a chance to go outside of the palace. So at 29 years old, can you imagine that? Mm-hmm. But the father made him stay in the carriage with the driver that was taking him around, so kind of a security. And but the very first time he went out in this carriage, he discovered poverty, sick people. He just really got his mind blown. And so he started to do this really regularly, because he found that he was very miserable with all this perfect stuff. He just didn't feel happy. Mm-hmm. And so that's what drove him to start pushing his father. You know, I want to go out, I want to do things. And obviously his father was pretty stubborn, because it took him until he was 29. But once he did it, he continued to do this. Well, on the third trip out, he saw the happiest person he'd ever seen, and it was a monk that was just working a field and everything, and he had like kind of drabby clothes on and a little bit of a hunchback and whatnot, but he had never seen joy like this before. So he jumps out of this carriage and just with nothing, and starts following this monk to his home to find out what is bringing this guy so much joy. And so for the next 6 years, he started practicing all the rituals that the monk was doing. So he would meditate for long periods of time, go fasting, but yet he very extreme. He went very, very extreme. And so he still didn't find that clarity and that peace of mind and that joy that he was, seeking after, that his soul was pushing him to. And so what he decided to do was, he said, you know what, middle path. I'm not going to starve myself anymore. I'm making myself sick. This is just not going to work. So in that moment, he decided that it was the middle path that was going to work for him. So of course he continued the practices, but just not as extreme. He didn't put himself in poverty where he didn't live in a home, but he didn't have a lavish lifestyle. So after a while of doing this, he discovered, that this is where it is at. It's not in the extremes. It's finding joy in the middle. And so, okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So, and there was certain things that brought him to this realization. So instead of just closing everything out like in meditation all the time, he decided, let me do some meditation where I meditate on the birds, where I meditate specifically on the tree, with the tree versus just sitting under the tree for shade. So he started to really connect with nature more, and he started learning lessons from nature and seeing how in harmony nature could be. And so he learned a lot from this. And so what he did is he just started incorporating the extremeness of the long-term meditations, the grounding with the earth. He, practiced yoga. He did all that, but he blended it all. Instead of doing it someone else's way specifically and being extreme, that's where he found the basis of his teachings. And that's when he became the Buddha, was when he was like, okay, this is how you find this joy. So, and I do want to highlight a few things. So in Buddhism, let me back up a little bit because I've left a little details out. So of course he was from India, and he was born in 556 BC. So quite a long time ago. So he was a philosopher, a mediator, and a spiritual teacher, as well as a religious leader. And so as he, just like me, he didn't specifically be like, oh, I'm gonna go become this spiritual teacher and a religious leader. It just became, it just was in his path. And so before he knew it, he had people leaving their homes, leaving their tribes, and going and following him from all over the world. People were coming from all over the world. And he mostly traveled through Asia, but people from all over the world came there to follow him. And they were very committed to his practices. And so, let me see where I'm at here. So, also something to consider too is when people say, I'm sure that if you know anything about Buddhism, you've probably heard people say that like it's based on like everything is suffering. The truth of that, the word is dukkha, and the truth of that is when you translate it from Sanskrit, we've generalized it and made it suffering, but the truth of it is actually dissatisfaction. So with that being said, yes, dissatisfaction is in everything if you don't have a higher awareness of the now of a moment. A lot of times humans, they want that first time experience and then they will chase that thing to try to have the experience again, but then they're dissatisfied with it because it's never going to be the same again because you're trying to project that past onto it, right? So when you're in the now with a situation and you let all things be brand new in that now, you have just cast out the opportunity for it to be dissatisfying because you're not comparing it to something else. Kind of like children do, right? Children, when they play with this toy, they play with it every single time like it's the first time they played with it. It's like got a new little story and it's doing a new thing, like they're always in the now with it. They're not like, why can't you be like you were the first time I got you? And so we can really learn a lot from just that, looking deeper into that principle. of that's where the dissatisfaction comes from, is that we're casting the past experience onto the new and not allowing ourselves to be in the now with the new experience being new. And we do that with relationships, we do that with our jobs, we do that with even just anything. It's just like, for instance, you go to a certain event and maybe you win every year, and how many times have you been like, oh, last year was better, you're never going to get that first time experience with that situation has grown, everything has changed, nothing is the same about it. So we're kind of delusional to think that, or expect it to be the same as it was anyway. So if we can get to a place where we start to allow the now to be the now, and yeah, it might look the same, but I guarantee you it's not. And it's not ever going to be. It doesn't have the potential to be the exact same, because everything in the situation has changed. You've changed. Everything changes as we grow and move through life. We have new situations that change us.
I actually, that made me think that, sometimes there's not even like something that we compare it to that we've experienced before, but like there's a preconception of what it's going to be like that we build up in our heads.
Correct.
That's just like, we try to compare it to it, and when it doesn't match up to like our ideal, it's just like, it's dissatisfying.
Exactly. And so you see where our power lies, right? Is our power to be fair to ourselves in the now. So, because that's where the lessons and the blessings in life are. They're always in the now. But yet, as the creator side of us, we try to create, but what we're doing is we're creating with the past as our reference. And so, if you weren't happy in the past, why would you want to create your present to be like the past? So any projecting from the past that you're doing on your current situation is literally wishing yourself back into unhappiness. So if we let that freedom of beingness be for everything in the now, then what we'll find is that, yes, this might be the same activity, but it has something brand new because it is in a brand new now. So just letting that beingness of the situation, that really can take you out of the so karma, the word karma is kind of like what you do. Think of it like planting a seed, and then so you're gonna plant that seed and it's gonna like grow or whatnot, and that's just something that happens. All right, but if you decide to just like not water it and everything, like you kind of didn't do what that thing took to get it. But now if you really love it and you give it the respect and the attention to water and make sure it has sunlight and stuff, the karma of that plant is going to grow. But if you don't do the things that is required, so that's the same with how you treat people, right? And how you treat yourself as well. If you kind of have bad intentions about things or whatever, that's kind of how things are going to work out, because that's where your focus is on it. So so it's a bit deeper than what we've kind of think about. It's like you reap what you sow, but there's more to that than just one sentence. It's a deeper practice that gets you to it. So the karma that we experience is really just a way for the things that we've experienced to teach us lessons. And it's not to make us suffer, it's to wake us up to the truth that we're the ones doing that. We're the ones that's asking for that cycle to continue by not being aware. And so it's actually doing us favors by having a little sting so that we can pay attention. Just like your body hurts sometimes if you overextend it, but if it didn't hurt, you wouldn't know that, and then you would overextend it. So it is for a good purpose. And so when we get ourselves out of the kind of the victim mentality and accept the pains that we have and look for the lesson and the blessing in it, as opposed to being like, oh, everything always sucks for me, why even bother, because it's just going to be like this. It's all there to teach us a lesson of some sorts that's meant to help us. So, and just so everybody can get the Sanskrit words a little better in your mind, dukkha. Dukkha. So it's D-U-K-K-A, and just about everything you see, it's going to be basically like equals suffering. But now you understand more in depth what it really truly means is a dissatisfaction. Now, of course, dissatisfaction can be really bad on this end, and it could be suffering, or it could just be like, oh, I prefer this over that.
It could be a minor inconvenience.
Yeah, it could be. So the way that dukkha is explained in the Buddhist religion, that kind of everything is dukkha without the right mindset of it. So without your right intention to perceive it in a fair and loving and trusting way that it is a guide, that it is there to help you, then yes, it is dukkha, and it is dukkha on purpose to help you realize that you're the one that controls your satisfaction or dissatisfaction. So, and that even comes down to buying a car. Just to bring it real simple, you buy a car and it's great for a little while, but then a month later you're looking at somebody else's car and be like, ooh, I like that one and everything. And so now this one's not quite as special to you anymore. And I'm not saying that it's not okay to still desire more other things, but to have an appreciation for the things that you have, that really does kind of take the more looking out on everybody else's and being like, oh, I wish I had that. And then trusting that what comes in your path, you know, there's a really good opportunity with this different car, and somebody comes in and is like, hey, you know, I need to sell this car because I got to pay my bills. Boom, the universe just brought you an opportunity to get another car. But then every time you're driving your car, if you're like, man, I wish I had a different car, this one sucks, that's putting yourself in dukkha. But being open for the now to bring you gifts and blessings, and then being like, oh cool, yeah, I'll take this car, you know, that's the good karmic side of it. But being like, oh man, you suck, car, and you know, why can't I get another car? Everybody else is like, that's putting yourself in dukkha.
Right.
So it's all about your power to control your mindset and connecting and trusting with the now, that it is set for your highest good if you'll let it.
I was thinking earlier, I was like, because this is something I've never done before. Like, and this is like really out of my comfort zone. But I almost let fear win and didn't come, because I wasn't even home. I haven't been home for 2 days, and I was gonna go home, but I was already late, so I just decided just to come
Oh, see, it was meant to be. Well,
yeah,
I'm glad that you did.
It needed to happen. Yeah, it needed to happen.
I am glad you did. And since you used the word fear, I'm so glad that you defeated that, because that was really a way that the mind does to keep you safe and out of, like, the mind is not meant for evolution, for like ascension.
Mm-hmm.
It is literally programmed to keep you in a safe space. So anything that's hurt you before, or anything that's not comfortable, like you haven't experienced, it wants to keep you here so that it can keep you safe.
Right.
Well,
There's even actually like a scientific side to it, where your mind reinforces the patterns that it has experienced you perpetrating. Like, if you do something over and over and over again, your mind makes it easier for you to continue doing what you have been doing. You know, so when you try to do something different, it brings up that kind of fear response, like, what are we doing? This isn't like what we usually do. This is something different. What if we're not good at this thing? What if, you know, so on and so forth.
Exactly. So that's definitely something that you want to immediately handle and speak with yourself when you have fears come up, because those are doorways. They're literally doorways. And when you face your fears and you understand lovingly what they're trying to say to you, you'll see they're actually your friend. They're trying to help you break out of the cycle of this, where you're not in your power. But when you use your discernment and you lovingly say, okay, where is this thought coming from? Where is this resistance coming from? And then you use your rational mind as well as your intuitive self to go through it, you could begin to see, like you said, I'm comfortable with this pattern. It's working. It might not be bringing me up, but I'm not going too far down. This is safe. And so then we can start to see that that we have more power over our reality and our happiness than we've definitely ever been taught, for sure.
Oh yeah.
But so yeah, and it really is. It's that time now that it's. That's why I do my part in it.
Yeah,
you know,
it's definitely that time now.
It's that time. It's that
Yes.
time now. Like, that's where the only true freedom lies, is being able to discern for yourself what you want from moment to moment. Because when you just naturally react to things, you're reacting from the past. So you're really unknowingly staying in your past pattern and cycles. So what is nirvana? So one of the things that the Buddha teaches is nirvana being kind of the end of suffering, or the end of dissatisfaction. Well, essentially we already kind of talked about it, right? Just being wise enough to discipline yourself, to get yourself back into the now with practice. And it does, at a minimum, 21 days of continually reminding yourself every time you start to do something. Like if you're eating, eat. Try not to eat and be on the phone doing something else. You want to feel that fork in your hand. You want to feel the vibration of it touching your teeth and the sensation of every bite, and being in the now with that. Because if not, you're training yourself to be out of the now. So you're on the phone doing this, that, and the other, and so you're really not ever focusing and being in the now. So, and it's going to keep happening because we're trained, right?
Yeah.
So you just correct yourself. You catch yourself doing it, and you say, no, we've decided that we're going to do this now. And so 21 days of and that's about an average scientifically, but it can take about 250 days to master something. That's not much.
Like
to master it.
For changing a habit, I think it's like 21 days is the minimum. 60 days is the average, like what it takes people to change a habit, and then like it can go all the way to 90 days, you know. But like if you keep at it, you'll be able to make that change.
Yeah. So just about a year, right there. If you do something solid for a year, your confidence level, see, your brain's not going to be doubting. It's going to become one of those habitual things. So now the way that you habitually kept yourself in this safety zone, you're habitually going to be in the now, accepting and receiving all the blessings. So yes, it takes a little bit to get there, and some work and some discipline, and lovingly guiding yourself back into the right path. But the same way that you would do with a child, if you told them no for something, and then after 2 or 3 times you let them get away with it once or twice, and then you try to tell them no again, you basically reinforced, if they keep trying, eventually you're going to break, and let them have it again. So you really do have to catch yourself every single time doing it. Take the time, take the love to correct yourself and be like, no, I'm going to put my phone down and I'm actually going to eat. And it's as simple as like when you go to wash your hands. When you touch the water faucet to turn it on, you want to actually, if you got any thought going through your head, it should be, oh, that plastic feels cool on my hands, or that metal. Like you should really be using this to be in the now.
Yeah,
like it's not a shut your mind off thing.
Like there's also something that tends to happen that sometimes interrupts people when they're trying to change a pattern. Like if they do it wrong once, sometimes they get down on themselves and they start thinking, oh well, I messed it up, now it's over, it's done. But I mean, even if you mess it up for one day, if you mess it up for one day, like you go back to it the next day, like you can forgive yourself and be like, you know, okay, I'm going back on this path, I had a mistake, it's fine, like I can continue to make this happen.
Correct, yeah, absolutely. Because there was time and space between that, but you still corrected yourself. You feel me?
Yeah.
Like you still made the choice to correct yourself. So whether you do it in 1 second or it takes you till you get home and you're like, oh, I realize I let myself go on that one. That awareness and that choice to I'll do better, I'll do it and make sure I try to do it better next time. That really is, like you said, that is still reminding yourself. So you're still doing the work.
Yeah.
And then it just becomes your actual normal process. But it's a little bit of a process to get there, but yeah, and it just day by day. So trick question. What is suffering? Anybody remember the word?
Dukkha.
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 Yeah, you got it. And what does dukkha actually really mean?
Dissatisfaction.
Right. So, but yeah, it's really somebody that doesn't understand anything about Buddha. If you're just like, yeah, everything's suffering, they may be like, well, then why? Then why do you even do anything?
Yeah.
Like it's not really it can be suffering, but it's more of that dissatisfaction of things not going the way that we already cast beliefs that it's supposed to be.
Right.
So you're never
That
going to
was-
be satisfied if you're doing that.
That was definitely a struggle I had for understanding Buddhism when I first heard about it, because I saw everything's suffering and all that kind of stuff, and I'm just like, at the same time, I personally have a different view of suffering. Like I see there is meaning in negative things that happen to you. There is a point to these things. Sometimes a negative event that happens even in society, right? It's just pointing out an issue that we have that we need to address.
Right,
there's
it's
a
your
point to
friend,
it.
right?
Yeah, there's a meaning to it. It's not negative. It is ultimately positive that this thing happens and that we have this chance to realize, we can do something about this now. We can see this thing for what it is.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that. And that's why I wasn't going to waste any time with getting to the truth of it, because that's what I'm all about. I'm all about the truth of it. And yeah, every book you pick up about Buddhism, it's going to say dukkha equals suffering. But the real reality and truth is when we go, taking words that aren't of our culture or our language, we get as close to it as we can, as catchphrasey as we can, and it's not the real full truth of it. But to understand that it actually is on a spectrum, that it could be extreme suffering, or it could just be I prefer something over it. But when we stay in that middle path with everything, with that understanding that it all has a purpose, and nobody's trying to pick on us here, it's all help actually at the end of the day, because when we get to a place where we're actually in the nirvana and we begin to be enlightened and spread our consciousness out, our light grows, and that is something worth so much struggle, and it's worth it at the end. So when you get to that place, you're like, wow, thank you for all that. And it is a process, but there will be a point, if you continue on this path, you will be at a point where you will, instead of thinking you need to forgive people or hand out forgiveness or receive forgiveness from anything, you'll realize, wow, that actually helped me. So there's no forgiveness needed there. It was actually a blessing to happen because it helped me on my path to realize this. So it's actually a really beautiful thing. So some of the things that Buddha did. Hi, welcome. Make yourself at home, and you're actually welcome to join. We're having service right now, spiritual teachings, and so if you feel the call to, you can have a seat and sit in and listen a little bit. But you're more than welcome to look around at everything. Everything's a donation basis. You're welcome. So some of the things that Buddha did when he kind of took everything on his own. He was pretty heavy into yoga. And I can imagine it wasn't like just the way this guy's doing it. He realized that your own body is going to tell you how it would like to stretch. If you'll let go of thinking, oh, it's going to be weird, people are going to think I'm weird. Like, my daughter does it to me all the time. She's like, why are you doing that? That's so weird. Because I just break out in random movements and stuff. But I don't care. I didn't let her or anyone else stop me from doing things that I feel are right for me. And I didn't really feel the need to explain it either. So that's probably exactly where the Buddha started with, like, you know, I don't really care what other people
It's
think.
like really
it's not my
feeling.
business what they think about me, and they could never even understand anyway if I try to tell them. So one of the things, and this might come up in a video that I'm going to play, but one of the things is, imagine that you are on an island with a lot of colorblind people. Everybody's colorblind, and you're the only person that can see color. Now imagine trying to explain to these people what color is. So, and they're probably going to think that you're crazy, or they're going to think you're really mystical and that you have like a higher knowing, and they're going to be like, but they're never going to understand what you're saying until they experience it, right?
Right.
So, with that being said, even with if you guys decide to continue with the practice and continue learning more and start implementing it into your life from day to day, you know, you don't even have to feel the need to tell other people, hey, this is, of course you can, but just understand that no matter how much you start to tell people, and still until they actually start to try it for themselves and see for themselves, because that's the only truth we know is through experience. Our only knowings, our true truths, come from experience. Even if every bit of the divine came right down here and showed up right in our face and said da 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 da, we still wouldn't believe it unless we had an experience in it. Now, like with our religions and stuff here, you know, we've kind of grown up and generation after generation after generation, it's been instilled. So it's pretty heavily instilled. So even though there's no proof in that, it's just something that's been kind of instilled into our culture. And so it's a little bit different, but so just be kind of patient with other people. If you do try to, the best way to do is just let them see the light change in you. Let them see your light get brighter, and then they're going to do like what Buddha did and start trying to check out what you're doing, and that's when they're actually going to get that fair chance. So your light will rise, your vibration will rise, and you're going to probably start to see that the people that you used to be drawn to, that used to be in your circle, if their vibration and light is not rising up too, you're probably going to find that you're not around some of the same people. But it's okay. It's not about them. We don't have to change the world. All we have to do is get ourselves back to authentic and do the work so that we can shine our light, and the world literally changes through your experience and through your perception. So, and I've always kind of made that comment to people that we don't have to change the world. All we have to do is make the changes for ourselves, and then that's when everything changes right before us. So let me just quickly scan and make sure there was nothing else on here, and then I'm going to play some quick videos.
Learning about Buddhism. That's what we're learning about Buddhism.
Yeah. So basically, what I've been doing is just telling you about like how it came about. There was still monks, but the Buddha became the Buddha specifically when he decided to not be so in an extreme. So monks will practice certain monks will practice like super extreme meditation, going in fast for super long periods of time and whatnot. And the Buddha, the way that Buddhism came about was finding that middle path and not having everything be so extreme and being in the now. So, and that's always been, before I even knew that Buddhism taught that was so we kind of found each other. I was like, oh, you know too, cool. So that's not where I learned it. I learned it through my own experiences in life and making certain choices. So I learned it in a similar way that Buddha did. It's like, and then you'll learn more too as you start to implement these things. You'll learn too, and your divine higher self will show you the things that work for you. So this isn't like trying to copy exactly what someone else is doing. Just be reminded to be in that middle path with an openness, letting things be what they are, not always desiring something else, but to appreciate what you have. And so some people may teach in Buddhism that you'll probably hear that desires are the root of suffering. Well, they are when you're desiring what was. But when you desire to be in the now, then everything is that. It is exactly the now. So you're getting that, and that's a good desire.
Like,
that's a good desire.
That kind of ties into like this. I used to have an issue with like a lot of ideas I would find about like ego death, and I'd be like, well, it's not so much death as it is just aligning ego with what your soul already wants, because they can work together. Your desires and what you want on a soul level can align. Can be the same thing.
Yes, exactly. So, and you can use that mentality with everything. So things could be just kind of like blatantly said, but it's like reading between the lines. Actually, what does that actually mean? So if you say desire is the root of all suffering, a lot of people might be like, oh, so we're not just supposed to desire anything? Like, that's not the point is what you're supposed to figure out and find. It's just like you said, that there are, the good desire is to trust your path and your purpose here, and to understand that the now is the place that you're going to have your guidance that is pure for your path. And that whatever is in that now, if you can appreciate it and love it as the experience of the now, then you're able to get the lessons and blessings from it without the suffering, because the suffering comes from projecting the past or the future onto it, which is always going to be dissatisfying. It's never going to work out the way that you want. But if you can accept for it, have an exception for everything, as in, by the way, no matter what happens in this now, I'm going to accept that that's happening with me in alignment for my highest good, for some lesson, whether it be in the future, but I'm going to let it be what it is in the now and just accept it the same way so the middle path, without feeling this way or that way about it, just being okay with it being. So the middle path is the same way. So it's like not the extremes of it, but it's okay. I'm not saying you're not ever going to be like super duper happy, but you'll take everything with that harmony, that peace,
Like
you won't have the extreme low either.
Yeah, you realize quicker, essentially, the difference that it makes in your life for the better.
And that's the proof, right? And that's what's gonna make that be a realization, a knowing for you, because then you've experienced it. And then it's easy for your brain to let you have it then, right?
Yeah.
Without trying to fight you, because it sees, wow, this can be safe too. Okay. So, and that's where you got to kind of battle with yourself, but you should do it in a loving way. Just be aware that all the thoughts that are going through you are for a reason. So when you find yourself in a fear of something or whatever, just really delve into that and make sure that you're aware of what that could be. It could be something somebody said to you when you were 5 years old that you held on to and you don't even realize it, So you want to make sure you use your own discernment where you are in your vibration, your energy, in your path right now, so that you're not using the old you to make the decisions for the new you in this life. So let me see. So we went a little bit over. Is anybody in a rush?
No.
Are you in a rush?
No.
Okay, good. Back on, maybe I just pushed
huge
Okay,
influence not
here we
only
go.
in Asia, but all around the world. And so, here are the 10 life lessons we can learn from the Buddha. Number 1. Practice the middle way. The Buddha says, the root of suffering is desire. Siddhartha Gautama spent the rest of his life reflecting on the 4 noble truths. 1. There is suffering. 2. The cause of suffering is our desires. 3. The solution to suffering, then, is to release ourselves from our desires. And 4. The noble eightfold path that leads us to our release from suffering. He realized that life was far from perfect, and people often try to distract themselves from realities by seeking material attachments like wealth, fame, and honor. He had the chance to experience this firsthand, being born into a very wealthy family. Before his enlightenment, he walked out of his palace for the first time and saw the 3 harsh realities: poverty, sickness, and death. Embracing asceticism, he later tried to escape the internal sufferings by depriving himself of any material comfort and need. With this, he grew very ill and realized that his asceticism did not spare him from his desires and suffering. Hence, he tells us that we must strive for the middle way, the life between luxury and extreme poverty, a balance between overindulging and depriving ourselves of the things we desire. To practice the middle way, one must free oneself of one's desires. We must celebrate the idea of just enough and embrace a more balanced, sustainable lifestyle that embraces the pleasures of existence rather than those of consumption. Nurse Bronnie Ware, an Australian nurse who focused on caring for terminally ill people, says that one of the common regrets of a dying person is, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. We tend to lose too much of our time chasing things that are easily disposable, getting the latest gadgets, wanting to get a new position, wanting to make 5 digits in our bank account. But after getting all of these things, we still find ourselves wanting more, or sadly, that we do not seem happy with it. When we equate our happiness with getting what we desire, we will never be happy and will suffer every day. Number 2, adopt the right view. According to the Buddha, do not get upset with people or situations. Both are powerless without your reaction. The Buddha is asking us to adopt the right view, to be more philosophical about the opinions we hold, to become aware of what we think, and then to inquire more deeply into why we think what we think. Only then can we know if our thoughts are true, false, or confused. Our thoughts affect our daily decisions and relationships deeply, and we would make better decisions in all aspects of our lives if we were clearer about the foundations of our own